I wanna surrender. Hey, welcome to the Glen Gauer podcast, sponsored by Mission Blueprint. What's going on, everybody? We sure hope you're having a great week. Today is part 2 of the 4 Marks of Marx. Here's a question for you. Why is the world the way it is? Is this by chance or by strategy? You see, 100 years ago, the entire world didn't struggle with transgenderism, these crazy high divorce rates, autism, the great number of abortions, kids with 2 dads as parents, or kids with 2 moms as parents. No, this was an agenda, ultimately dictated from the pit of hell. The agenda is to destroy mankind by first breaking up the family. Ultimately, it's Marxism. And Marxism is an attack on the transcendentals, truth, beauty, and goodness. What is cultural Marxism, then? I'm watching the Europa series, and they dig into smashculturalmarxism.com. And this is how it is explained. Cultural Marxism, or cultural Bolshevism, seeks to destroy everything good about society, what holds it together, what helps it to advance, what promotes intelligence and beauty. It seeks to degenerate society and take it to a lower form, where people are less intelligent and more animal. It's based on the Marxist lie that everything good about society is all a form of oppression. Every time anyone promotes cultural Marxism, they use the same line claiming it is about freeing people from this oppression. Now, these common cultural Marxist themes are all promoted by the same lie, that they are done in the name of freedom, which are liberalism, sexual perversion, degenerate art, degenerate music, mass immigration, anti-intelligence, and promotion of people acting like animals, corrupted versions of feminism, multiculturalism, oppressing people of European ancestry like me, and destroying nationalism as well as destroying non-Jewish religions. Cultural Marxism is largely a synthesis of Marx and Freud. It is Marxism as applied in the cultural sphere and the analysis and control of the media, art, theater, film, and other cultural institutions in society, often with an emphasis on class, race, and gender. Sounding familiar? As a form of political analysis, cultural Marxism gained strength in the 1920s and was the model used by a group of intellectuals in Germany known as the Frankfurt School, and later by another group of intellectuals at the Center for Contemporary Cultural Studies in Birmingham, England. Now, these fields of cultural studies and critical theory are rooted in and influenced by the work of cultural Marxism. Cultural Marxism is formulated as a way to subvert European nations and civilization using methods other than direct political action. William Lynn, Patrick Buchanan, and others states that cultural Marxists set to control society by manipulating language, media, and academia by way of political correctness by employing the Frankfurt schools. So let's bring in Dennis. Hey, Dennis, say hey.
Hey. How did you know I graduated from Frankfurt School?
I did not know that.
Yes, I am a cultural Marxist.
No way.
Yeah.
You know, I went to that same Frankfurt School, and I didn't see you there.
Well, because you're older than I am.
What years were you there?
I was there 96, 97.
So was I.
Oh, man.
Honestly,
I'm full of
I was in
bubble.
Europe. Actually, I was in Europe in the spring of 1996 for 4 months. I studied at Franciscan University of Steubenville, Ohio, in Gaming, Austria. 100 college students. Can you say party? Oh my gosh, did we have fun.
I can't imagine.
We went to school Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Thursday night, most of us jumped on the train and went somewhere in Europe. It was so much fun.
What happened to that guy? Where is he?
What guy?
That guy from Europe.
What guy?
Yeah, exactly. You killed him.
What are you talking about?
You.
Me? What do you mean me?
You from the 1996. Where's the 1996?
I'm still here. I'm right here.
All right. I was there in the summer of '97 for 4 months.
No kidding.
Yeah.
We just missed each other.
Just missed each other by a few months.
What were you doing over there?
I went on a cross-campus work exchange. We worked with our sister university from Dakota State with college up in London, and we installed computer networks during the day and touristed by night and hung out. And then we took a break for a month and went down to Europe or down to France and hung out. Got a sweet villa, just a little flat that overlooked some fancy street that had a great view of the Eiffel Tower. Mm-hmm. You walk up and down the street every night after you got done doing your touristy thing, and you tried to speak a little bit of French so they didn't treat you too bad. And you get a bottle of wine at one shop, you get a stick of salami at another, you get a slack of cheese at another, and then you walked across the street and you got the fresh French roll that was 3 feet long. And if you were lucky, you got a big slat of butter, and you went up to your flat, and you went up on the roof, and there's about 500 other college students there because they're all hanging out too, just living the European. What do they call it? Backpacking. Everybody's backpacking.
We never had an issue in France. You know, we hear all the time, "Oh, the French hate Americans," and you know why?
Because you act like an American.
Yes, Americans come across so arrogant and demanding, and they refuse to speak the language.
Right. If you make a half an attempt, they love you. Like they want to talk. They want to know as much about America as you want to know about France. Like, it's awesome. I loved it.
I love France. I love the wine. We would drink wine, cheese, just like wine, cheese, bread. That's all we needed. It was so wonderful.
Yeah. And in the morning, a hard roll, maybe some currant jam, some great coffee, and you just were set for the day. And then you walked everywhere.
Everywhere.
It was great. Narrow little cobblestone streets. I still remember how it smelled. I love it.
Real quick, favorite place in Europe?
Favorite place, Salzburg. Hands down. Salzburg, England.
Salzburg, England? You mean Austria? Oh, there's a Salzburg, England?
Yeah, it's the last point where you get off the tram before you take a tourist bus to Stonehenge.
My favorite place,
Go for it.
Assisi, Italy. Oh, wonderful. There's so much peace there. So last week, Dennis, we talked about the aim.
There's our detour.
Yeah. Yeah. Last week, we talked about the aim to kill the family, traditional family.
And it's working.
Yeah, I want to continue with that a little bit, and then we'll get into...
Do you have some follow-up thoughts from last week?
Follow-up thoughts from last week.
Yeah.
Oh, how true it all is. I mean, you think about how many traditional families as compared to untraditional families. I believe we are now in the minority.
Very much so.
Yeah, in this country, that's crazy. We're really playing with fire. So that was one of my thoughts after we were discussing that. But we will get to the right to property. How about any quick analysis from you?
You know, I wanted to touch on it too because one of our listeners sent me a really cool video, and what it was is kind of one of the hot topics right now is all about equality and where are we as a culture with privilege, and call it whatever kind of privilege you want, white, black, green, orange, purple, it doesn't matter. This youth leader, arguably probably from some metropolitan area, has a whole bunch of students in his midst. They're women, they're boys, they're girls, they're black, they're green, they're orange, they're brown, they're tan. And he has them all line up on a line. And it's like a soccer field. And they're going to have a race for $200 cash. And he's got it way down at the other end of the field. But he starts off, anybody who is from a two-family or a husband and wife family household, like both your parents are still together, take 5 steps forward. Now, anybody who had a private tutor takes steps forward. And he goes through all these little things that you and I would argue as commonplace here in the Midwest. And he got done asking his 20 questions. And he had all the kids turn around and look back at each other. And he goes, it's not anybody's privilege. It's how you were raised and the opportunities that you've been given. That doesn't mean somebody from the back of the line isn't going to be the first one to get this $200. But it does put certain people at a life advantage because they're more well-rounded, they're more well-grounded, they have a better bearing and a less likely chance to fall off trajectory of a good, productive, and wholesome life than somebody who hasn't had all these things in their life. And that's why I think it still is just a great message about Jesus, is that he loves all of us. And he loved the bottom of the barrel first, because a healthy person doesn't need a doctor. The sick do. Mm-hmm. So I hope we can give people a little dose of medicine here tonight, and they can share it with their friends.
Well, let's give it a shot. So what we're trying to do, ladies and gentlemen, is help you understand that there is an attack on the family. You need to be aware of what school you attend. You need to be aware of the friends around you. It's always good to know the truth so we can plan, right?
Well, the adage, right, is if you want to be incarcerated for drugs, hang around with 6 drug dealers. Or if you want to become someone who becomes a smoker, hang around with 5 friends who smoke, because you'll be the 6th one. You want to be a millionaire? Hang around with 5 millionaires, because you'll be the 6th one.
You want to be holy? Hang out with me.
You hang out with holy people.
You find me. You just watch me, right, Judah? He's laughing, shaking his head.
That's why we do this podcast. We're trying to get those holy people to come be holy with us.
I'm so holy. Anyway, let's continue. So we have these 2 schools, the Frankfurt School and the one up in, what is it called? The Center.
It's the Contemporary Cultural Studies of Birmingham, England.
There you are.
Center for Contemporary Culture.
So we have these 2 schools teaching heresy. I'm not sure if there's a better word than that, but they are encouraging the breakdown of the family. They had these requirements for making movies. So they had these 4 requirements, and I'm going to give you some examples, and we can chit-chat about it for a second. So the first requirement in making movies that encourages the breakdown of the family is, 1, the protagonist and or the antagonist are divorced. Now, think of the movies that you have seen where the parents are divorced. Here's some examples, and maybe you have some too. Do you remember the movie The Parent Trap?
Yes.
Okay. How about Mrs. Doubtfire?
Yep.
Catch Me If You Can?
Yes.
Say Anything?
Yes.
Kramer versus Kramer.
I haven't seen that one.
Dustin Hoffman and who's the lead? What's her name? She's one of the best actresses. The Santa Claus with Tim Allen. Have you seen that?
Oh, long
Divorced.
time ago.
Divorced.
Okay.
So a lot of movies. I mean, there's hundreds of movies. Somebody's divorced. And ladies and gentlemen, just think about it. Dennis, think about this. How many movies do you see where there's a real strong traditional family today?
Next to none.
There it is.
Next to none.
Okay.
I mean, you even think about some of the Disney movies, Frozen. The parents are dead and gone. They're raised on their own, in their own accord. Mm-hmm. Tangled. She lives in a tower. No parents around. She just decides what she wants to do. Princess and the Frog. What are some of the other ones? Like,
I'm trying to think.
There's just a strong, even from Disney, there's a strong tendency of just do what you want to do. Just do what feels good. There's no leadership.
Have you ever wondered why those Disney movies always start with something tragic in the beginning?
Well, it's the buy-in. It's the part of creating a great story, because you have to have the hero who has a problem, and they have to meet a guide, and the hero has to meet the guide, and the guide tells them what to do, and then that hero travels through the story and either has victory or failure or has to overcome some obstacle, and at the end is the win or the loss. But you got to have that hero, and anytime you can tie an emotion, it just makes it that much more powerful, a story.
But we're talking about death of parents or death. It's just, the tragedy is so strong, and I can never figure out why it's so strong in these little children's movies.
Well, because it's that connection that they can get of their biggest fear, being abandoned, being left behind. If you've ever met children who've come from families who've lost a parent or are in the foster care system, they call it reactive attachment disorder. They just don't ever get close to people again.
Right. I know about that. Okay. Let's move on. The second requirement is the female is dominant, controlling, violent, and or one-up on men. I've never seen a movie like that. Have you?
That's the way I like my women.
Bad. Well, here's a couple examples. The Hunger Games. Have you seen The Hunger Games?
Katniss Everdeen. May the odds ever be in your favor.
Kill Bill.
Kill Bill.
Star Wars. The later
ones.
What's her name?
Rey Skywalker.
She was amazing. Luke had to go through all the training. Did Rey? Oh no, she just sort of caught on.
Well, that's because she was a Palpatine.
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Have you seen that movie?
Oh, love that movie.
Wild movie.
I love that movie.
How about Wonder Woman?
I haven't seen that one.
Wonder Woman is, as movies go, excellent. It really is an excellent movie. How many Disney movies had a male lead, a strong male character?
We did this as a team in my office. The last movie I can remember that had a strong male lead, anybody in my team and our clients could remember, was The Lion King.
Did you know The Lion King had at least 20 subliminal messages that said sex?
Oh, yes.
Horrible. All right, so let's move to the third requirement. The third requirement, aiming to encourage the breakdown of the family, is the male is aloof, feminine, overly sensitive, or cheating on his wife. Sound familiar?
They're bad guys. Men are bad.
That's right. We're bad, or we just don't get it, or we're really soft and sensitive.
And I hope the people listening, just think about this back to modern culture. Frozen is the one that stands out to me. Moana. Have you seen Moana? Okay, so Moana's a little girl. She's supposed to be chief of her village, but she decides to go out and find Maui, who is a demigod, to fight Kata and make the ocean a better place again. And yeah, the whole lineage there is just defiance, independence. It's me. It's all about me. I don't need anybody else. I just do it because of me.
Sounds about right.
But in the Frozen movies, the male characters are evil. The Love's True Kiss boy turns out to be evil. The boy character in it, Sven, is super indecisive, non-direct, can't make up his mind, doesn't know what he's supposed to do, follows the advice of his reindeer. Hey, it just...
What about Olaf? What is Olaf? Male, female? What's going on there?
Well, the size of his nose. I don't know. Magical characters are, meant to be transcended.
Well, whether these are movies or not, you can see a lot of TV shows where the men are just way behind the women.
But look at how...
Everybody loves Raymond.
Yeah, and look at how over-dominant his mother-in-law was and demasculating she was.
Great character, but yes, not right.
Everyone's classic that's still on TV now and again, Married with Children.
Right.
I mean, classic example of what every American male should be like. Not.
What a role model. I look up to him as much as I can.
I try to look down on him as much as I can. Al Bundy.
Oh, my goodness, great. I'm just kidding, everybody.
Yes,
for the record,
right.
They're going to pin this against me.
I know. It's
hey,
okay.
The fourth requirement to encouraging breakdown of the family. Somewhere in the family, at least one immediate member is a lesbian, gay, bisexual, or a woman's liberal.
Yeah, if you look across almost all television shows currently, and it doesn't matter if they're streaming or your day-to-day, I like watching House. House has a team of people that help do the diagnostics, and one of the team members is always one of those. Or dealing with some aspect of that, or the element of it is present.
What effect do these 4 requirements actually have? We know this was an intention to break down the family, but as the viewers are watching these movies, these programs, what are they actually picking up?
It normalizes it. It makes it okay and normal, like, oh, that's supposed to be that way. And it's a desensitization that, no, really, this is a small minority of people within a culture that have this level of confusion or this little direction. And we're just normalizing it and bringing it down to such a level that we accept it as culturally normal.
Yeah, the word that comes to mind is permission. I now have permission to be like that or like that.
You have a cultural reference.
Yeah. Yeah, it's okay.
I'm going to be like Al Bundy because he's dad of the year.
And he's funny.
And he's funny. And he hates his neighbor, but, they're going to spy on the pretty chick fixing the refrigerator.
All right, let's get in. Any other comments about the first mark to destroy the family?
Just beware. What your inputs equal your outputs. And what you're watching and modeling as your points of reference are going to be there. Tristan and I right now, we love the Yellowstone. We're loving that series, and holy smokes, you want to watch a TV show that talks about strong family union and strong male leadership. That's your movie.
Here's my takeaway so far. Ladies and gentlemen, be careful what movies and TV shows your children watch. Censor.
Screen 'em.
You
Screen
betcha.
'em.
Screen them. We have taken almost all our Disney movies out of the catalog. No more. Maybe not everyone, but almost all of them. And we screen everything. If you're not sure what to watch, go back to black and white.
Pretty innocent back then.
Yeah. Watch The Andy Griffith Show. Watch The Dick Van Dyke Show. Watch Mary Tyler Moore. Watch My Three Sons. We
watched Three Stooges.
Oh, there you go. Little Rascals.
Little Rascals.
Yeah. Go back to those shows if you're not sure. All right. Let's move into the second mark of Marxism. And this is where Dennis, this is not my expertise at all. This is where I really rely on Dennis here. The second is to destroy the right to private property. So why is the right to own private property so important for the human person?
So the right of owning private property is really, really rooted largely in the Eastern European migration to the Americas. And I say this very lovingly as a culture of escaping the oppression and suppression of the empires and the ruling class in Europe, largely under the religious auspice of being suppressed for your religious views. People exited to America. And our founding fathers had a very strong foundational belief that people needed to own property for self-preservation, for representation, for good rule of government. Because if you could fend for yourself and you could own your own land, no government, no one could ever own you. You could always take care of yourself. And that was the whole point of coming across the ocean and doing that arduously dangerous journey. And I'm really surprised as I take a side note here, that there are huge factions of cultural and history people that are now looking at old trade routes for sunken ships, of everything from African trade ships coming and bringing slaves here to just clipper ships that were trying to bring immigrants across the ocean from Ireland here. And everybody's trying to find their past and find their history and see what's there. So it'll be interesting to see what comes up in the next 30 years. Anyhow, on a side note there. So we've got this strong, deep basis root of owning property, and that it's really embedded in the American culture that you aren't somebody till you own your ground. But when you own it, then it's all yours. I mean, you've got to maintain it. You've got to leave it better than you found it. You've got to pay the taxes on it, and all of these little finite details, which are now getting very corrupted as the wheel of history and the wheel of government has turned, because no longer is it about I'm self-sustaining and self-sufficient. Now we're being sold a bill of goods that, hey, this is way easier to rent. Somebody else's problem, somebody else's taxes. If I wreck it, somebody else comes and fixes it. And think about that even from the aspect of how many people lease a vehicle now instead of own it. Because, well, it's really the dealerships. Well, honey, you're renting the privilege to drive that car at $400 a month. And if you divide that out by the day, it's $12.50 a day for you to drive it. Plus, you got to put the tires in it, do the oil change, and put gas in it. So really, the thing costs you like $25 a day to drive.
Not to mention, you pay taxes every 3 years.
Right.
On a new vehicle.
On a new vehicle, and title, and license. Yeah. So this idea of ownership and property ownership is really getting convoluted. And so much so that the United Nations has set out new agendas and new missions of Build Back Better, which is oddly coincidental that our president's current position is Build Back Better as a campaign. But I haven't seen anybody wear a Build Back Better hat yet. Have you?
No.
I've got my Make America Great hat, but I don't know. But anyhow.
They're coming.
Okay. Hopefully. Must be on back order. Oh, COVID. Supply chain issues.
That's right.
Forgot about that. But the Build Back Better idea comes from the UN mandate that the world needs to follow Latin America's example of property management, property ownership, because they're dealing with rainforests and they're dealing with deforestation issues, and that the government really needs to get a handle on this for climate control. Because with all of the surveys done by the United Nations for the last several years, the biggest geopolitical concern worldwide is climate and climate control. Which, okay, I can buy that. Like drought, famine, all the things that come from a changing climate and a changing culture. Sure, that's okay. But then we have to do our homework. Like what's going on in Latin America? In Latin America, in some countries, less than 8% of the ground is privately held.
Is that right?
Yeah. And there's some neat graphics that I hopefully will put up with this link for our podcast tonight that actually go in and show what current land ownership in the United States looks like under the government ownership, like what Bureau of Land Management owns in the United States, not national parks, even not all the other subsets of government land that's owned. Biden has signed an executive order in his first weeks of presidency that it's 30 by 30, that 30% of the land in the United States will be back under government control.
Wow. That's a lot.
It is. And one of the big programs here in South Dakota that everybody knows about that gets land under government control is
CRP?
CRP. Because the government pays you to plant a cover crop for habitat restoration. Usually a 10-year lease, maybe it's an 8-year lease, but it's guaranteed payment from the government to not farm the ground. They recognize that they won't be able to pay high enough dollars to offset. Corn this week is going over $5 a bushel, and beans are expected to go over $18 a bushel this week.
Wow.
Yeah. A bushel.
Wow.
That's a lot of money sitting over here at the soybean plant. And that side of it is the government knows that it can't. So what it's another executive order that's been signed is that farmers, property owners, people in general will pay a unrealized capital gains tax every year. So if you own a 401k and it goes up from $100,000 this year to $150,000 by the end of the year, you will have to pay $50,000 on the on that gain, that $50,000 gain at 30%. So that's $15,000, but you've never sold it, so you don't actually have an income or cash to offset that. So you're going to be asked to pay taxes on something that hasn't actually been realized because it hasn't gone in the marketplace.
How is this legal?
They're writing it into the law, and it's writing it into the tax code. And all somebody has to do is put it in the tax code, and it becomes law. And once it becomes law, it's legal. Same way with the corruption of the family. We have some states where you, as an independent business owner, say you make cakes for weddings, and somebody comes in, and because you have religious beliefs against same-sex marriages, and you say, I'm sorry, I won't make your cake, but here's 3 other people I know that will, that person can sue you for discrimination because they have a religious stance that goes against legal.
Nuts.
Totally.
30%.
30%.
And who gets that money? Where does that money go?
What money?
The 30% tax on the capital gains.
Oh, that goes back to the government.
That's right. That's what I'm saying.
Because that's their way of redistributing wealth to the people who don't achieve, who don't accomplish, who don't save. That if Judah decides that he is going to be a rock star and he goes to Nashville, Tennessee and plays a guitar in a street corner, that we can guarantee an income of $25,000 a year for him to go follow his dream.
Go Judah.
Minnesota is doing a trial program on this right now. Guaranteed income.
Okay, so let's get this straight.
Okay.
Each American has the right to own their own land.
They do.
Okay, we have the right. And there are fruits and there are responsibilities to owning your own land, right?
There are.
What happens to the human condition if we are told you can't own, you can lease from the government? This is a way out there question, but what do you think?
So you're actually touching on the point of what is common practice in China. So in China, you never, as a citizen, you never own the dirt that you build your house on or where you live. You take out a 99-year lease from the CCP, and then you can build your house, your property, whatever. And then, of course, it's assessed and taxed. But if you die, your house doesn't go to Judah. It goes back to the Chinese government, who then gets to actualize all the income from either selling or releasing that home, and the government becomes the tenant. But in that deal, this is where you hear public-private partnerships. You have long arms of the public that work with the government and manage what the government can't. And then they get rewarded very heavily financially for the management by tax breaks, tax incentives. One of the ones that was really hot and bothered is when Lowe's came to Brookings. They bought out the old Kmart location. No, I take that back. They bought the old Runnings. Runnings was across the street, and then Runnings moved into the Walmart, and then Walmart built the big one.
Gotcha.
Anyhow, when Lowe's came to town, they got a special moratorium from the city that they didn't have to pay any property tax for like 10 years.
How'd they do that?
Because the city of Brookings wanted the sales tax revenue from having a lumber yard of that size and of that national recognition. It was, for them, it was simple accounting. If we give this corporation a break, they're going to come to town. They're going to employ 150 people a week. And, I mean, there's days last year during the pandemic that Lowe's here in Brookings, our little Lowe's, did over $1 million worth of sales a day.
Wow.
$1 million of product sold a day.
Okay, so here's the $1 million question.
Okay.
The first mark is to destroy the family.
Yes.
The second mark is destroy the right to private property. Let's connect those two. Is there a connection between, okay, we need to first destroy traditional family, and then the next step is we have to destroy the right to private property. How is this a linear thing? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's more like a spider web. And if you put the breakdown of the family at the center, what's the hardest part of any family going through a divorce? Division of assets.
Right.
Parents, two income household now becomes one. Neither parent can afford the house. So now dad's renting an apartment and mom has to either buy something smaller or rent a house too because can't afford to do it by themselves until either one of them gets married and they can jump back on the monkey train of trying to buy another house again. But again, cultural normalization. What do? You go off to college and you rent from the state. 2 years minimum. Live in the dorms. All your food plan, all paid for, all prepped for you. What do you learn to do? You learn to eat out. You learn to make other people prepare food for you. Instead of it just being 1 meal a day, it's 3 meals a day. It's when you send your kids to Rome, expect them to turn into Romans. And that whole cultural normalization, the propaganda idea of, okay, well, no, you don't need to own. It's easier to lease your iPhone. Why would you go buy one? You just lease it for 2 years, man, and I'll trade you. I'll give you 80% of the value in 2 years, and you can just trade it. Go buy a car. Buy a car on lease because you don't have income. You don't have money. Just lease it. Just rent it. And then you don't have to own it. It's fine. Now get to a house. Oh, a water heater could break. I have to do repairs. That's hard. You have to move snow. And it's all about easy all the time, every time. And we are desensitizing and normalizing our culture of our children and our society of just go easy. And that it's corrupting the foundation, no pun intended, when you talk about where are we going with this? The spider web just expands. It's the next ring of destruction. And you keep carving away at that family unit, that family center of go back and look what they did 100 years ago. A community came together and built a barn. The Amish still do it. The Hutterites still do it. It becomes a family event, a family activity where you take care of each other and you build something better for the family because everybody in the family is going to enjoy it. And our culture now is being pushed to break it, vandalize it, break the windows, steal it, take it. You deserve it.
So we have a family that is no longer together. Not only that, they don't have a place to live anymore. That's unsettling. And you talked about this renting concept. I kind of think the renting concept came about, for me, credit cards. A lot of people didn't have credit cards. And if they did, a lot of the rich people had them. But we poor people, we didn't have credit cards. But then all of a sudden, everybody could get a credit card. And then you started buying things that you didn't need, and then you didn't pay it back, and then pretty soon you have a 13% interest rate. So you're just really renting all the things you have, and then leasing came in. I think, around the 90s? You could lease a car. You don't have to buy it. You could lease it. It's renting a car. And so then you could lease every 3 years and get into a new car. It's a great idea. Well, who's making money off of that, right? The car agencies. And you know what? They're not putting a bullet to your head. You're the one signing on the dotted line. So I believe we are conditioned or being conditioned to get used to this idea of not owning a thing. And if you don't own a thing, you don't have certain rights.
Well, you no longer have a financial basis in which to fight for your rights. Well, if you're just renting, you don't need a gun. It's not your property.
That's right.
If you don't own that ground, you have nothing to borrow against. You haven't. I love Dave Ramsey. He calls a mortgage a forced savings plan. And when you get to retirement age, you have something to borrow against if your health isn't great, or you leave an asset that allows your children to have a springboard for a better start for their own lives.
Well, it used to be an investment.
Yeah.
I mean, you used to get 6%, every year. And you've heard people buying a new house every 3 or 4 years. And then by their 5th house, they're in a free house. It's paid for.
Yep.
Yeah. But anyway, I think it's fascinating where we're going here. Breakdown of the family, breakdown of the right to private property. You get the last word.
And even owning property and where this, and we'll put the links into the New York Times article and to the Bureau of Land Statistics and where things were in 2016 to where they're going to be in 2020, theoretically. It's just wake up. Just wake up and look at this, because there's so much zooming past you. And if you're into your phone, if you're into binge watching the next TV show and being deculturalized and decentralized to these ideas of what has made our culture so ultra successful here, you're gonna have the world spin right by you, and you're gonna be sitting there in 10 years going, how did we get here? You think about just the concept of an iPhone. I have an old iPhone 5S. It was the first version, was Siri. The last time I found it, I got it plugged in and it's working. But the last time I checked the email on it was February 28th, 2016. So that's 6 years, right? Mm-hmm. The iPhone I have now is a 13. So they have made more cell phones and more cell phone versions than they have had years. And what my iPhone 5S could do to what my phone now does.
Or remember the BlackBerry?
Well, that was my jump, as I had a BlackBerry before I jumped to the iPhone. And where we're going with what will be available for distraction and entertainment is mind-blowing. I had a patient tonight. He's divorced. God bless him. Wife, 2 kids. Kids are really struggling. And he just told me, he goes, I don't know how to get my kids to stop playing on their tablets when they come to my house, because that's what mom lets them do. I said, it's easy. I said, you don't let them in your house. And he goes, funny you would say that. He goes, there's a guy I work with, and he told me 6 months ago that the best thing that ever happened to him was at 14, his dad came home from work one day, figured out his kid had been on the Xbox like 8 hours in the middle of the summer, and his dad took the Xbox and kicked it down the stairs and then took a hammer to it and smashed it until it was dented and beat and broke. And this kid, now 20-something, said it was the best thing his dad ever did for him. And this is the thing, is as a parent, stop feeling like you're being held hostage. You're the one who buys them. You may take them away. Yes, your kids are going to whine and they're going to moan. It's because it's all they know. There's more to know than what's in the box. So that's my parting thought for tonight.
Excellent. Tangent. Xbox story. I might have shared this, but when I was in Rapid City.
That's on the other side of the state, right?
It is.
Okay.
My parish priest got a phone call of a 12-year-old kid seeing black things. He was playing video games. He had an Xbox. So he goes over there, and the kid was shaking. He was just shaking. He said, what's wrong? He said, those black things will come out of the Xbox, and they'll come under the couch, and I'll play, and then they'll go back in there when I'm done. But one of them scared me. Well, maybe we should get rid of the Xbox. No. You don't have to do that. Right. You don't have to do that. Just can you just do something? Maybe spray some holy water. And the pastor said, I think I'd get rid of that Xbox. No, we don't want to do that. He loves playing video games. He could not talk the parents into getting rid of it. So that story that you just shared, that father really did that kid a favor. I talked to this kid. That's exactly what he told me too. Little black things would come out of that box. And it didn't happen right away. He had been playing the Xbox for maybe a year or two. And then slowly they'd just come out and they'd sit right under the couch where he was sitting on the floor. And he just got used to it. And pretty soon something happened and one of them scared the you-know-what out of him. He was shaking. He couldn't even talk. Ladies and gentlemen, be very careful what you let your kids enter into, what movies they watch, what TV shows they watch, especially when they go to their friends' homes. There was a lady in Rapid City. I thought she was a little too rigid, but her kid was going to watch a movie at my place. I was the religion teacher. So you would think I have some judgment in movies. Well, she was, asking me about the movie, and I thought, gosh, she is just over the top. But she was right. She wanted to know what her kids were going to watch. And I assured her, I think it was A Man for All Seasons or something like that. It was clean.
That's the proper type of helicopter parenting.
That's the proper type. All right. We've talked about the first goal of Marxism, destroy the family. We've talked about the second goal of Marxism is to destroy private property. This web is going to continue to expand from family to property to faith, your religion. So that's the next thing we're going to talk about, ladies and gentlemen, next week. Part 3 of the 4 Marks of Marx, Destroy Religion. Going to be very interesting. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next week. God bless you, and may God strengthen the bars of your gates.